in, man.
Unscaled with Jeremy Long. Saturday afternoons at 2 on KSHP, North Las Vegas, AM and FM, K29, 6HP, North Las Vegas, and KSHP.com.
The views and opinions expressed in the following
Hi,
program.
I'm Coach Harvey High, and every Thursday night at 6:05 p.m., we have our college football report show, which means we talk college football year-round, not only college football, but all sports right here on AM 1400 on your dial, all the things that are happening behind the scenes that sometimes you don't really understand. That's College Football Report, Thursday evenings at 6:05 p.m. here on AM 1400 KSHP Radio. Now you remember to buckle up and ride along with us every Thursday night with College Football Report.
Are you tired of the same old boring travel shows?
Then tune into the Unscaled Travel Show presented by Diamondback Land Surveying each Saturday at 2 p.m. on KSHP. I'm Jeremy Long, the Full Metal Traveler, and along with my wife Amy, we'll take you to places you've never heard of and introduce you to destinations you've never seen.
If you're ready for adventure out on the open road, check us out on the Unscaled Travel Show presented by Diamondback Land Surveying each Saturday at 2 p.m. on KSHP or find us online at fullmetaltraveler.com.
The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the program's participants and do not necessarily reflect those of station staff, management, and advertisers.
It's time for the most interactive radio program in Las Vegas today. It's time for Pushing the Limits with Brian Shapiro. Brian will talk sports, politics, entertainment, and anything that matters to you. Feel free to call Brian at 702-221-7283.
You want answers? I want the truth!
Now, Pushing the Limits, here's Brian Shapiro.
All right, what's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. I know I did, and happy to have you guys with us this afternoon, making us a part of your day, and we've got some great guests lined up for you. Big show today, and boy, do we have a lot to get to. So you might have heard of this guy. I think most of the listeners out there know him as the Q Shamon. Recently getting out of jail, he was the first person who was indicted for January 6th. His name is Jacob Chansley, and he's now running for office. He's going to be joining us here in just a few minutes. I know it's going to be a very interesting interview, so he'll be joining us here in just a few. And a lot of other interesting stories to get to, a lot from a sports perspective. Of course, we have the NBA midseason tournament, which is the quarterfinals, by the way, are today and tomorrow. And that actual tournament is in Vegas on Thursday, so we're going to talk a little bit about that. We got Chris Wynn joining us in studio, hour 2. UNLV football, disappointing loss against Boise, but I told you guys all week last week that I expected Boise State to win this game and win by double digits. They're just a better football team, all due respect to UNLV. And we've also learned where the UNLV football team will be playing their bowl game. It's going to be in Arizona, and they're going to be playing the Jayhawks, Paul McKeskey's team, the Kansas Jayhawks. So we will be talking a little bit about that. UNLV football, the Raiders had a bye week, and we had the Pac-12 championship game. That was here in Las Vegas. Boy, was that a fun one. Oh, man, was that a fun game to watch. UW getting it done. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Man, there's so much to get to. And I wouldn't even call it controversy. I would just call it just the NFL once again failing the fans, failing the Kansas City Chiefs, pure incompetence. And where's the accountability? Multiple officials yesterday cheated the Kansas City Chiefs on a number of different no calls at the end of the game. Egregious. It's hard for me to compare it to another sport, but let's just say there's 5 or 6 seconds left to go in a basketball game, and the team that's down by 1 has the ball, and a defender takes that person's head off and clotheslines that person, and the ref doesn't call a foul. That's the best analogy I can make to what happened last night. And we've seen this way too many times. And then we hear the excuse, well, if it's a Hail Mary pass, and by the way, I wasn't even talking about the Hail Mary pass. I'm talking about the play before. Even the Hail Mary pass, okay, Travis Kelce got pushed by 2 hands in the back. So that should have been a flag as well. it's my frustrations with the NFL time and time again where the officiating is so inconsistent. Listen, I get it. Refs are going to miss calls. Could be in college basketball, in the NBA. It could be in the NFL. You know, it could be anywhere. It could be Major League Baseball, balls and strikes. We're all human beings and we're going to make mistakes. But when you're a professional, and in this case, you have NFL officials that are making a lot of money. I actually know one of them. He wasn't working the game last night. I know one NFL official very well, and he makes a lot of money. He lives here in Las Vegas. He can't really walk into a casino, can't go anywhere near a sports book. There are very strict rules. I wish they were that strict when it comes to refs blowing games, because that's exactly what took place yesterday. I just thought it was an abomination, a disappointment, an embarrassment. Call it what you want. But the end of that Kansas City Chiefs game last night was a joke. I'm not saying the Chiefs would have won the game, but you would have had the ball first and goal at the 3-yard line, so it really changes everything. As far as the UNLV football game goes, UNLV had, I'm going to call it a disappointing loss just by the way they lost. They got blown out by Boise State. Boise State is a very good football team. They've got the offensive player of the year who's going to be playing on Sundays. They have a quarterback that is really, really efficient and really, really good. Boise State fans traveled well. The issue I have is that there are people that I've been bickering and fighting with on social media, which is, by the way, a waste of my time, that are saying that there were over 20,000 UNLV fans there. And I'm telling you right now, I can see with my own eyes, there were not 20,000 UNLV fans there. Maybe 10 to 15. That's not enough. And the lack of support from fans was embarrassing from a UNLV perspective. And you know, I think it was sad. A lot of Boise State fans were out there. Not a lot of, or at least enough of UNLV fans out there. Now, I haven't really given out the call-in number, but I'll try to squeeze these in real quickly because I love my listeners, right? Why don't we go with Robert first? Robert has called in to Pushing Limits. What's up, Robert?
Hey, what's up, Brian?
How you doing?
Hey, I never hear anybody talk about this referee thing.
Yeah.
That they're intentionally making bad calls because of their own agenda.
Could be.
No, nobody ever says that.
Robert, could be. Robert, could be. I've talked about this before. You might be right. I'm not going to sit here and say that these refs weren't on the take. Some of them could have been.
I'm not even talking about one certain game.
Right.
It's been happening since the 2006 Super Bowl.
I'm not going to deny
it. With the Steelers and Seahawks.
Robert, I'm not going to sit here and say it's not happening. I'm not one of those people. I think it could be.
There's grudges. There's people you don't like.
Listen, a guy that I know pretty well. He's done this show before. His name's Tim Dennehy. If you recall, he was the former NBA referee.
I know what you're talking about.
Tim Dennehy has done this show before, and he was on the take. And I shouldn't say on the take, but he got involved with the wrong people, and he was fixing games. I don't care what he or anyone else says. He was fixing games. You cannot tell me, Robert, at the end of that game yesterday.
But the agenda could be betting. The agenda could be his wager. It could be a grudge against a player who said F you to him.
You are absolutely correct.
That's what's going on. That's what's going on.
I agree. Robert, I agree with you 100%. Here's my problem. What is the NFL going to do about it? Whatever the situation is,
they don't have to answer to anybody.
Well, there's the problem.
There's the problem. They have to. Bill Belichick has to hold a news conference. He hates it.
Right.
No referee has to do a press conference. It's like a secret society.
This is where
there.
Major League Baseball has it right, because if you recall, in Major League Baseball, those umpires do talk to the media when there's a controversy, and usually they apologize when they get it wrong. What I want to see, it wasn't one official, by the way. Several officials should have made that call. They both were in the area.
I don't even know what call you're talking about, bro.
The end of the game last night.
I heard you talking about referees.
The end of the game last night. The end of the game.
I think you're a smart dude.
I appreciate that. Robert, the end of the game last night, I don't know if you caught it. Kansas City Chiefs were playing last night against the Green Bay Packers, and there were 2 no calls. Guy pretty much got clotheslined at the end of the game, and then Travis Kelce gets pushed 2 hands in the back. They blow both of those calls. Not one person.
They won't rerun that because I watched all I do is watch highlights.
Right.
They did not run these highlights.
Well, I got to tell you.
The Steelers game,
yep.
T.J. Watt was held blatantly, and they didn't show that on SportsCenter. So SportsCenter gets the word that we cannot talk about the referee.
Well, I will give the Sunday Night Football crew credit because Chris Collinsworth said it multiple times that the refs missed calls, and they had one of their officials experts on who also agreed, and they showed the plays. So I will give the Sunday Night
okay, with the Chiefs game, I can rewatch it. I can watch that.
You'll see what I'm talking about.
What quarter was it?
It was the last 10 to 20 seconds of the game. So here's what I want you. So Robert, here's what I want you to do, Robert. I want you to watch the final couple minutes of that football game, and I want you to call me back tomorrow and let me know what you think. Deal?
Yeah, you on for 3 hours or 2 hours?
Unfortunately, 2 hours. Only 2 hours. Fortunately for some people.
All right, Brian.
All right, thanks, Robert.
Take it easy, bro.
I appreciate the call, my friend. 702-221-7283. Let's go to Mo. Big Mo. Is that Big Mo?
What's up, brother?
Paul McKeskey. What's going on, my friend?
Not much. You know, I was in a quandrum last night because my Packers and Chiefs were playing.
Yes.
And I wanted the Chiefs to win in my heart, but at the same time, the Chiefs lose. They're still in the championship for their division, and the Packers still have a shot. But, man, that one call, not the one in the end zone, the one before that was so bad. And, you know, I've dealt with refs before, you know that, and you know, but I think more than betting, I think it's, remember they called the wrong call on roughing the quarterback when he was still in bounds.
Yes.
And I think something like freeze over, it's a call, you know?
Yeah, I think there could be multiple reasons why, but I think we all could agree it's inexcusable. That would be like clotheslining somebody at the end of a game when they're trying to shoot the basketball. I mean, that's a call that you have to make, and I just think it's an embarrassment to the NFL. It's an embarrassment to the league, and you have to hold those officials accountable. You know, officials are going to miss calls. You can't miss that one when it's that blatantly obvious, and there's shenanigans going on, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the guy was right there.
Right.
He's standing right there.
He rode his back. It was a clothesline. It was a wrestling move, you know, and it's so egregious that they missed it, and it's unfortunate. It's sad, and there has to be accountability.
And there definitely, I agree, there's definitely personal issues getting in the way. I think less with NFL, but a lot with the NBA. I mean, you know, LeBron got kicked out arguing with the coach the other day, and, you know, these guys are, you know, there is some personal issues going on with referees that have to ref these games over and over and over again against the same guys.
No question, but there has to be accountability. That's what I'm talking about. There absolutely has to be accountability, and that's what worries me, because I don't think there's going to be accountability here. Now, maybe those officials don't get playoff games. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is. I agree with you. And by the way, I would be lying to you if I said good luck to your Kansas Jayhawks, but in the bowl game. Mo, we will see you later in the week, my friend. I appreciate you calling in, and we'll catch up with you later in the week. Paul McKeskey, thank you so much.
Rock, shock, Jayhawk.
All right, Mo, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. Thanks. Love you too. Thanks, Mo. Paul McKeskey, 11-year NBA veteran, calling into the show. All right, we're going to switch topics now. So a lot of my listeners are probably be very familiar with the guy that is joining us on the line right now. Many of you probably know him as the QAnon Shaman. His name is Jacob Chansley. Jacob was the first person indicted for the January 6th insurrection. He's owned what he did. He got out of jail. He did his time. And now he's running as a libertarian for the 8th Congressional District out of Arizona. So I appreciate Jake taking the time to join us. Jake, thanks so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'd like to say for the record, nobody's been charged with insurrection. If you want to see an insurrection, look at what happened in Afghanistan during the Bosch withdrawal. That's an insurrection.
We can definitely talk about that. There were some people that were charged with sedition, and some people would characterize it as an insurrection. Some people wouldn't. We could definitely get to that. Let me start by asking you this. You've already answered the question of, do you regret what you did? Do you own what you did? I'm not going to ask that question all over again because you've already answered that, and I appreciate your answer. But let me ask you this. If someone asked you, why were you there to begin with, what would be your response to that?
I've answered that question a lot as well. Spiritual reasons, because Washington, D.C. is built on ley lines. Those are electromagnetic lines where pyramids, obelisks, ancient temples, medicine wheels are built. It's why we have an obelisk in D.C., the Capitol building, the White House, the Supreme Court, the Lincoln Memorial, Jefferson Memorial. They're all built on ley lines. Mm-hmm. If there's going to be 1 million people on the ley lines, then I'm going to be there as a shamanic practitioner to ensure that the highest possible frequencies of love, peace, and harmony are put into the grid. Also, because there has been a long string of abuses that this federal government has perpetrated on us Americans, and it stretches all the way back to 1913, the Federal Reserve. It stretches all the way back to things like allowing Pearl Harbor to happen, the assassination of JFK and the cover-up that ensued, the massive amounts of corruption and the moving of our public tax dollars into the private hands of oligarchs and to international corporations and banking cartels. Then there's things like, Waco, Texas, Oklahoma City, 9/11, the Vegas shooting, the 33,000 emails that were deleted and no prosecution, Benghazi, no prosecution, the WikiLeaks emails from John Podesta. Then there's also things like the Russia hoax for 4 years that they never, retracted. It was now clearly known to be a hoax and all generated by the Clinton.
Let's go one at a time. Let's go one at a time. And this is the beauty, right, Jacob, doing an interview like this, instead of doing like a 5-minute TV interview. We have time to talk about these issues. Okay, so you mentioned a lot. Let's start with the Vegas shooting. And then we'll get back to January 6th. And then I want to talk about your candidacy because you're running for office. What about the Vegas shooting that you think, did or didn't happen? Because my understanding is that there was one person responsible for that, and that was the shooter who took his own life.
Yeah, that's the narrative that they say. But when you talk to people that were on the ground, that's not the story. And a lot of those people that came out and started talking about what actually happened and what they saw and what they experienced ended up dead. So, it's kind of funny how that happens and how it's happened over and over again, especially with people like Gary Webb, who blew the whistle on the CIA trafficking tons of cocaine into the country, or, people like Bill Cooper, or, even people like Martin Luther King Jr. that stand up and speak truth to power. All of them end up dead somehow for some reason. So,
that's because a madman, a racist madman decided to assassinate Martin Luther King. I don't think that had anything to do with the government in that situation. But let's go back to, let me start by saying this. I agree with a lot of your platform, right? You've talked about this, and I did a lot of research on you as a libertarian. You want term limits. I'm with you 100% on that. You want single bill voting. I'm with you 100% on that. And a lot of the things you've talked about, where I hesitate and I'm like, okay, that's different, or I could use other terms, is when you talk about, say, the Vegas shooting. It's been investigated. One person was responsible. There's no evidence that anybody else was responsible for it. Now, you might find a few people that disagreed with it, but there's no evidence to support the fact that there was a second shooter or the FBI was involved. And when I think some people would label that as a conspiracy theory. I know you're a smart guy, you're well-spoken, and I agree with you on a lot of issues. But when you say, the Vegas shooting and some of these other things, I become hesitant. Where am I wrong?
Well, do you trust the government?
Do I always trust the government? No, but that doesn't mean I think the October 1 shooting was the government's fault. It was a crazy lunatic who lived 45 minutes from Vegas, who bought a bunch of guns. It's been proven that he was trying to come up with other areas of killing a bunch of innocent people. He shot himself in that room, and there's no evidence to support the fact that anybody else was involved besides him. That's why go ahead.
Well, hold on. Let me ask you this. Do you think that somehow miraculously one of the terrorists from 9/11, that their passport miraculously survived the tragic events of that day and just so happened to find its way onto the ground?
Okay, so that's a different topic. If you want to talk,
no, I'm just but the point I'm getting at, dude, and we can derail on this if you want, but I don't trust the government. I've seen cover up after 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 cover up. And if you look into Operation Northwoods, which Kennedy said no to, okay, which is where the CIA wanted to target hotels in Florida, and do a terrorist attack and blame Cuba so they could have an excuse to go and invade Cuba. If you look at that and you realize that there is a track record of government abuses, this goes back to my reasons for going not just on January 6th, but also on December 12th, when everything was actually peaceful. I expected more of the same on January 6th. Then you'll see why it is. And I didn't even get a chance to start delineating things like, like I said, the Russia hoax for 4 years they knew was a lie. Then there's the COVID lockdown.
When you say Russia, okay, let's go to the Russia hoax. Do you not believe that Russia interfered in our 2016 elections? Because I'm trying to understand what you mean by Russia hoax.
Okay, if Russia wanted somebody to be president, they would have picked Hillary Clinton because of Uranium One and the fact that she was more than willing to cooperate with Russia and send Russia our nutrients, our minerals at a discount. The notion that Russia was interfering in any way, shape, or form, more so than the Chinese, which the Chinese are more likely to interfere in our elections than Russia. We get 25,000 cyber attacks from China and the Chinese Communist Party a day.
You find it ironic that Donald Trump has never said anything negative about Vladimir Putin. In fact, he stood on a stage right next to Vladimir Putin and said he believed Putin over our own CIA and FBI. You don't find that a little interesting that Trump to this day has never said one thing negative about Vladimir Putin? I'm not a huge Joe Biden fan, but at least he called him an evil, murderous dictator, which is what Vladimir Putin is. I think we both could agree on that. You don't find that ironic?
Well, no, actually, I think it's rather interesting because there's some things that Putin has said and done, like kicking Monsanto out of his country, for example, that I actually agree with. I think we should have kicked Monsanto out of this country a long freaking time ago. But they line the, bureaucrats and the DC puppets with lots of money through lobbying. That's why they get liability shields for their toxins. That's why they weren't prosecuted for things like Agent Orange or, any of the many other, ecocides and cancers and stuff they've caused. So, we live in a corrupt system in this country, and that's what my platform is designed to dismantle. Because those four things that you forgot to mention, 7-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for insider trading.
Which I also agree with you on. So let me try to define this here. We agree. I don't always believe our government. Do I believe there's a lot of corruption in DC? Absolutely. I'm with you 100% on that. But I think there's a fine line between saying that and saying 9/11 was an inside job. Or the October. I know a lot about the October 1 shooting, brother. And I'm telling you, Jake, right now, you can believe what you want to believe, but one man was responsible for killing all those people. The evidence is overwhelming. And I think when you make a claim like that, you have to have evidence to back it up. Not just a couple people said blah, 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 blah. But let's
hold on a second. I'm not making claims of anything. What I'm saying is there are way too many unanswered questions, and there is way too many patterns of cover-ups taking place by the government when they orchestrate things and then they go awry. So I don't trust people. I don't trust institutions. I trust patterns. And the patterns that I've seen throughout the last several decades is that the American people have become a target for intel agencies. They've become a target for investigative agencies like the FBI. And anytime their power or their supremacy is in any way, shape, or form challenged or threatened, they have no problem killing people.
Well, let's talk about, for example, the 2020 elections, because is it fair to characterize you? I know you're running as a libertarian. If it was Donald Trump versus Joe Biden, is it fair to assume that you would vote for Donald Trump if the elections were tomorrow?
Well, I can't vote, but yeah, absolutely. You think I'm going to vote for Joe Biden? Well, look at the country, dude. Look at the country. Okay, well, look at the state of the world. You think that would happen under Trump?
All right, well, let's talk about that, Jake. I would say if not for Donald Trump, you would have never gone to jail. You wouldn't have been there on January 6th. I would say if not for Donald Trump, a lot of lives would have been saved with the coronavirus, with which we can, by the way, I'm happy to talk about that with you. So there are positives and negatives to every presidency. And I'll be the first one to say I voted for Joe Biden in 2020, not because I'm a Democrat, because it was an anti-Donald Trump vote. He's also facing 91 felonies. Do you believe Joe Biden won the 2020 election free and fair? I'm not asking you if there was.
Not.
Go ahead.
No, I do not. Look into Mark Elias and the way that he went into swing states and changed the election laws in courts. Look into the Zucker boxes. Look into the ballot harvesting, the mail-in voting. Look into the way absentee ballots were a factor. Look into the way that the voting machines could be hacked by the Ericsson Corporation out of Sweden and how they control our whole global infrastructure.
Why didn't Donald Trump's own attorneys present any evidence in a courtroom?
Well, because all of his cases were civil cases and they were not seen in court. I'm curious to see what happens in Georgia, considering it's a federal case and he now has subpoena power and he can end up bringing forward all of the evidence.
If you don't trust the 2020 election, then why are you running for office if you don't trust our process?
Because I'm of the belief that we as American people, if we all become active, if we all vote, then we can do something like turn the tide in an election. And it is my contention that the people here in the 8th District of Arizona want very real change. And I think that they believe at this point they're not going to find it in any Republican or Democrat candidate, establishment or MAGA.
They didn't want it with Kari Lake. They didn't want it with Kari Lake, who also echoed what you echoed, that the 2020 election was stolen. With all due respect, I completely disagree with you. That's like saying the earth is flat, in my opinion. Kari Lake is the one that said over and over again that Trump won. And guess what? The good people of Arizona did not vote her in. So listen, if you think that Trump won, that's one thing. I haven't seen all those things that you listed are like Dinesh D'Souza stuff. The bottom line is we had Republican judges appointed by Donald Trump. We had, secretaries of state, Republicans, and there has been zero evidence of widespread voter fraud that could have changed the outcome of the election. And I'm being honest with you, Jake, because I think you're a smart guy. You're well-spoken. I agree with you on a lot of issues. But when you start talking about Trump won, it's where I become hesitant. Because, yes, I do believe that's a conspiracy theory because there's no evidence to prove that Trump won the election. There's just no widespread voter fraud out there.
So let's talk for a second about this term conspiracy theory.
Okay.
That was actually a term that came out shortly after JFK was assassinated, when lots of people in the country did not believe that Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman in the JFK assassination.
Just because JFK might have been killed by our own CIA doesn't mean that Donald Trump won the 2020 election.
Okay, so you're telling me that JFK being killed by our own CIA is somehow not cause for concern? You don't think that those powers that had a sitting president assassinated?
I didn't say it wasn't cause from concern. I didn't say that.
Just hold on.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about. I want to quote JFK for you real quick, okay?
Okay, but what does that have to do with the 2020 elections?
I'll tell you. I will tell you. Just listen, okay? JFK said in a speech, "We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasions, on subversions instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conspired vast human and material resources to create a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, scientific, economic, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No rumor is printed, no expenditure is questioned, and no secret is revealed." What JFK was talking about when he talked about this tightly knit, highly efficient machine, the machine that I believe had him assassinated in broad daylight on live television in front of the entire country and then brushed it under the rug, that tightly knit, highly efficient machine is the same military industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about. It is currently what we call the deep state. It is called the swamp in other places, or the shadow government by other people.
What is the deep state?
Okay, so the deep state is actually a number of things. Number one, it is the corruption of the key checks and balances portions of our government, so that the checks and balances portions of the government can be corrupted and therefore circumvented, so that power can be centralized within the electoral bodies of our.
Let me ask you about that.
Just hold on, dude. You asked what the deep state was. Do you want to hear the answer? No.
Well,
because this is really important. Telling people what the deep state is very important, because we can't just call it the boogeyman, because that's essentially what a lot of these candidates are doing. We have to articulate what it is. So it is these key checks and balances portions within the government that have been corrupted so they can be circumvented and power can be centralized within the electoral portions of our government. And it is those same corrupting entities that have corrupted the over 500 bureaucratic agencies that are in charge with quote unquote regulating commerce. Now, these bureaucratic agencies are writing regulations, which is a form of law, what we can buy, what we can sell, what is legal, what is illegal. They also have their own enforcement agents for these regulations. So they have legislative writing law. They have executive enforcing their regulations, enforcing their law. And they also have their own administrative courts, which are outside the federal court system. And that is actually the founding fathers' definition of tyranny when you consolidate all three branches of government into a centralized power. Okay, so when you have these corrupting agencies or corrupted agencies along with the corrupted officials in the government, right? And these two entities are working together along with the international corporations or banking cartels that seek to monopolize our currency, resources, and labor. Now you're beginning to see how the deep state is formed and how it has exponentially grown for decades since Kennedy was talking about the tightly knit, highly efficient machine, since Eisenhower warned us about the military-industrial complex.
Okay, let me jump in here and let me ask this. I hear a lot of people on the right use the term deep state. I understand that you're not a Republican. I get that. But would you admit that if there is a deep state out there, it's not just Democrats, it's both sides, Republicans and Democrats? Would you be willing to
Absolutely. Absolutely. The uniparty in DC is a very big problem.
Okay, so I think that's important. Even though we might disagree on some things, I think it's important to note that if you think there is corruption, which I believe there is, or you think there is a deep state, that it could happen on either side of the aisle. I think that is important to be at least fair on that. So let's go back to the 2020 election, if I may. Does January 6th happen if Donald Trump doesn't say months before, I won the election in a landslide, Joe Biden cheated and the Democrats cheated? Would you have been there on January 6th? And does January 6th happen if Donald Trump doesn't say those things?
I'll say this. January 6th was a setup on behalf of the deep state. It was a setup because, and if you want, I can explain.
What do you mean it was a setup? You were there.
I'll explain. Okay. So Chief Sund, the former Capitol Police Chief of the Capitol Police, he had certain emergency powers where he could invoke the National Guard at will that were stripped from him shortly before January 6th by Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell and the Congress. Okay. They made it to where he had to go through them to invoke the National Guard. Now, all of that being said, when he asked for the National Guard, when he submitted the paperwork, he was told no because it would be quote unquote bad.
I know. I read that testimony. I understand. I read that testimony. I know. Hold on, but this is important. I know exactly what you're saying. That doesn't mean that the over 1,000 people that were convicted were set up. Nobody forced you to go into that building. Nobody forced them to beat. I know you didn't, but people beat police officers, Jake, that day. They defecated on Nancy Pelosi's desk. They were chanting, hang Mike Pence. Those people weren't set up. They're idiots. Those people are idiots that were doing those things. They're criminals. There's a reason why you're not behind bars right now, because good behavior, right? You didn't attack any police officers. You didn't steal anything. But will you at least agree with me that those people were violent that attacked police officers and they deserve to be behind bars and they weren't set up? They're bad people.
Anybody that attacks police officers or vandalizes property deserves to be prosecuted for their actions. However, one thing I want you to note, and this is actually something that has come out very recently, okay, is that the FBI infiltrated many of the patriotic communities online and on the ground, and at this point, all of the rhetoric regarding violence and the calls for violence on the day of January 6th, there's over 200 either confidential federal informants or agents that were fomenting the violence and actually participating in pushing people to be violent or being violent themselves with no prosecution. So
hold on, let's backtrack. Who pushed people like you to be violent? I know that you were not violent, but I'm just using it as an example.
So then why is that directed at me? And I just told you it was federal agents, and that this is part of the reason why.
Did anybody push you to be violent that day? Did anybody tell you to be violent?
This is why I'm saying that it was a setup, and you haven't allowed me to delineate further. It's not just what Chief Sund said, okay? There's also the fact that Yogananda Pittman, the Capitol Police intelligence officer did not get this information to Chief Sund that she got from the FBI and that she got from the Pentagon, which this is all according to Capitol Police Lieutenant Tarek Johnson, who's been blowing the whistle about this for a while. But the Mockingbird media does not want to interview him about these things.
I'll interview anybody. I'll interview anybody. I'm interviewing you. I'll interview anybody. So I'm certainly not a part of the Mockingbird media, as you would call it. I want the truth. My understanding is over 1,000 people were already convicted, you being one of them. And let's just say, hypothetically speaking, that you're 100% right, that people were, as you use the term, pushed to or coerced into doing things. Guess what? We're all adults. You made the decision to go in there. They made the decision to go in there. I don't care, quite frankly, if somebody said, hey, you should do this or you should do that. I noticed something you haven't brought up. You brought up Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell. You haven't brought up Donald Trump, who sat on his ass in the White House for 5 hours and did absolutely nothing while a woman was killed and officers were beaten. Why don't you put any of that criticism and responsibility towards Donald Trump?
Well, I've said this on several occasions, and you probably missed it. And that is that if I were Donald Trump, the first thing I would have said the moment that I took the stage at the Ellipse was, when we go down to the Capitol today, do not break any laws, do not cross the barriers, do not touch any police officers. You must keep it 100% peaceful and within the law.
I agree. I agree. So, Jake, with that being said, do you think Donald Trump should be held partially responsible for what took place that day?
No, I do not, because he is not in control of anybody else's actions other than his own. And if it's true that it was a setup, and I do believe that it was a setup, most certainly, then it seems to me that the setup and the psyop that include that was afterward, that was in response to the setup, those things are psychological warfare 101, dude. These are the things that the deep state has been doing for a long time.
These people that you're claiming set it up, are they Democrats? Are they Joe Biden supporters? Who are these people?
Oh, I think they are uniparty. I think they are the intelligence community. I think that they are the investigative agencies like the FBI, the CIA.
And why would they want this to happen? Why would they want
Pentagon?
This to happen?
What's that?
Why would they want this to happen? Why would they allegedly set this up? Why would they want an insurrection? Yes, I do believe it was an insurrection. Why would they want this to happen?
Well, you see, it's all about political optics. They could use this to not just go after Donald Trump and not just impeach him a second time, but then, take him to court under things like seditious conspiracy and the setup itself. I mean, like the fact that Enrique Tarrio was offered a plea deal where he just lied on the stand and said that he had a third party between him and Trump that were organizing January 6th, and they would let him go free after a couple months. The fact that he said no to that and blew the whistle on that, okay, that right there is evidence of corruption. The fact they were going after Trump, but it's also about going after his supporters. Hold on, it's also about going after his supporters, creating the optics in the country that Trump supporters are somehow a danger to our country, and then weaponizing the government to go after them in each of these FBI field offices over the country. I mean, Stephen Friend, the FBI whistleblower, talked about how the FBI is being weaponized against American citizens. He talked about how these people are basically being labeled as domestic terrorists. There's literally no more U.S. Marshals on airplanes anymore because they're following anyone and everyone that went and flew into D.C. in early January of 2021. Even if they didn't even go to the J6 rally, the air marshals are not keeping Americans safe because they're going after the political opponents of this administration.
Let's talk about that. The domestic terrorism. I don't know of any court in this country that has labeled anybody on January 6th as a domestic terrorist. But I will say this: if you and I'm not putting you in this category, but there were people there. I think the majority of the people there that went into the Capitol were very ignorant people, very stupid people that did some very stupid things. They did some violent things, some of them. They stole some things. They destroyed property. And yes, I think the overwhelming majority of them were MAGA Donald Trump supporters, and that was proven in a court of law. I don't think this was Antifa. I don't think this was a setup. I think this was overwhelmingly a lot of stupid people that day that did a lot of dumb things, hang Mike Pence, and they wanted to overturn the outcome of an election that to this day, you still say Donald Trump won, which I think is absurd because there's no actual, real, overwhelming evidence to prove something like that. I appreciate the fact that you've owned what you did. I give you credit for that. I always have. You did your time. and you got out and you said, listen, I did what I did. I own it. I appreciate that about you. But let's be honest here. A lot of dumb people did a lot of stupid things that day. Why can't we just characterize it as that instead of saying they were pushed to do things by Nancy Pelosi or infiltrated by the FBI? Dumb people did stupid things that day. How could you disagree with that?
Well, I've said before, anybody that vandalized property, assaulted police officers deserves to be prosecuted. And that would also include all of the people that were rioting all over the United States of America, burning down businesses.
BLM has nothing to do with January 6th.
No. Hold on. What we're talking about here is my standards for justice. If you assault police officers, if you vandalize property.
I agree.
Okay. So hold on. Then why is it that 90 to 95% of the federal charges against those rioters in 2020 have been dropped?
Can you name me one name of one person that assaulted a police officer during the BLM riots that was not prosecuted?
Yeah, dude, you can look it up. Kamala Harris was bailing him out of jail, dude.
Not true. What you just said is not true. And I asked, let's go back to what you just said.
Oh my gosh.
Hold on. Kamala Harris wanted to make sure that people that were arrested got legal representation. That's number one. And number two, I asked you to name, because you made a very serious charge there, and you made it seem like people that attacked and hurt police officers weren't prosecuted. I'm asking you to name me one name of one actual individual during the BLM protest, clear-cut evidence, assaulted a police officer, and was not charged with a crime. Can you please name me one name?
Look into the indictments that were dropped. 90 to 95% of the charges were dropped. Look, dude, I'm not going to give you a name because it's irrelevant.
It's actually irrelevant. Very relevant. You're claiming that people
it's irrelevant,
assaulted police officers. Okay, well, let me give you the big difference.
Because
here.
the Mockingbird media said that it was mostly peaceful as a building burned behind them, as people in CHOP or Chaz were literally being raped and murdered. Okay, and they called it the Summer of Love. Dude, they literally occupied a federal court building in Colorado.
What member of the media?
They tried to set a building. They tried to set a police precinct on fire in Portland,
Jake,
with police officers inside.
Jake.
So hold on a second, dude. So look. What we're talking about here, once again, is optics, bro. What we're talking about is optics.
Yeah.
And the optics were made to look in a certain way by the Mockingbird media, and they were made to look a certain way about January 6th by the Mockingbird media. They used my image, in part with the images of violence outside the building, to create a shock and awe campaign. And then they used that shock and awe campaign to divide the country based on dueling sides of propaganda around an event that has a very gray area. It's not black and white. Now, do I think that the right wing of the Mockingbird media and the left wing of the Mockingbird media are inaccurate in their portrayals of January 6th? Yes, I do. Absolutely. It's designed to divide us. Okay, it's a gray issue.
You don't think Donald Trump tried to divide us? You don't put any.
No, I think the Mockingbird media did. Dude, look, I've been to enough Trump rallies to see that there's black, white, there's Hispanic, there's Asian, Donald
Trump got under 50% of the black vote. So let's not try to preach that all these black people.
And look at the hood now. Look at them supporting Donald Trump now. Okay, we've got a lot of people, even in Brooklyn, bro. I'll make you a bet in the 2024 election that there's no way he gets 25% of the black vote. Now, you'll probably say that was election fraud, and you'll say the election was stolen. But let me ask you another question. Why is it before 2016, months before the election with Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump said the election was going to be stolen and it was going to be fraudulent and Democrats were going to steal the election and Hillary was going to steal it? Then all of a sudden, Donald Trump won. And all of a sudden, I didn't hear anything from Donald Trump or right-wing Republicans out there, even people like you, saying that the election in 2016 was stolen. Why is that? For the next 3 years, I didn't hear anything about election integrity, and Hillary Clinton conceded the next day. Is it only when Donald Trump wins the election's fair, but when he loses, it's a lie? Maybe it's because the Democrats were the ones screaming about the voting machines and election fraud and Russian interference.
Hillary conceded the next day.
Yes, they were, dude. Yes, they were. Look, come on, bro. Like, you can't deny it.
Prominent Democrat, and by the way, there wasn't an insurrection. Democrats didn't cause an insurrection. But what prominent Democrat can you name?
They just rioted all over the country. That's what they did.
They did? Really?
Uh-huh.
Didn't Hillary concede?
Look into it, bud. Look into it.
Didn't Hillary concede the next day? Did she not?
Well, if you consider saying that the election was stolen from her over and over and over and over again in concession, then I guess so.
She never said the election was stolen. She called Donald Trump an illegitimate president. I think when you say that, up to POWs, John McCain, I don't respect him because he was captured. In my opinion, that makes you illegitimate. But you know what? Donald Trump won the 2016 election. He won it fair and square. Never once have I ever said the election was stolen. But then he wins, and all those comments go away. Oh, I guess this was a fair election. But when Donald Trump loses, then the Democrats must have cheated. That's the point I'm trying to make, Jake.
So you believe that Biden got 81 million votes?
You know why I believe that? I'll tell you why. Because of people like me. I'm a registered independent. I voted for Joe Biden, not because I'm a Joe Biden supporter, because I'm anti-Donald Trump. It was an anti-Donald Trump vote. So the answer is absolutely 100% yes. And if Donald Trump stayed off of Twitter and he stopped being such an a-hole and attacking every single person that disagrees with him, didn't say that COVID was going to be 15 cases down to 0, and take his COVID campaign, turning it into campaign rallies. If he didn't do all those things, he would still be president of the United States. Donald Trump did this to himself, Jake.
Okay.
You disagree? Tell me why you disagree with me. Why did he lose?
I don't think he lost, bro.
Well, that's clear, but I mean, you can say that, but Kyrie Irving also says the earth is flat. It doesn't mean you're right. This is what's frustrating.
Well, see, now what you're trying to do is you're trying to correlate these two ideas.
Yes, I am.
And I don't agree with that correlation.
Well, I think they're both conspiracy theories. You have to have actual real evidence.
Conspiracy theories.
Well, in a courtroom, Donald Trump's own attorneys had the opportunity to show evidence. They couldn't do it. Carrie Lake said that the election was stolen from her. She had the opportunity, her attorneys, to prove it in court. She couldn't do it. Your attorneys, even though I know you disagree with the attorneys that represented you, and I feel bad for you when it comes to that, by the way, but they couldn't prove that you were innocent. It's why you went to jail. I'm not saying every case is full-blown, innocent people don't get thrown in jail, because sometimes they do, and it's terrible. But we have our day in court. Donald Trump will have his day in court facing his 91 felonies, which I would also assume you probably think he's innocent, right?
The DOJ and the FBI have been weaponized against the American people for decades.
Okay, so does that mean every case, every person is innocent and nobody commits any crimes and Donald Trump can do no wrong? Is that
no, that's not what that means at all.
So what does it mean? That Donald Trump is innocent, and that's why you think he's innocent, because the DOJ... By the way, Jack Smith's also prosecuted Democrats. Were you aware of that? He prosecuted John Edwards. I don't know if you were aware of that. So do you think this is the deep state going after Donald Trump as well?
What I think is that the deep state, these weaponized agencies, they practice something called prosecutorial discretion or investigative discretion, where the people, whether they be U.S. attorneys or people that are like high-level agents within these agencies, choose to prosecute or not prosecute, choose to investigate or not investigate crimes and file charges. And the fact of the matter is, there is numerous cases of this happening. A great example would be Jeffrey Epstein. The feds knew what he was doing, and guess what? They were in league with him. Mossad and CIA were like this with Jeffrey Epstein, okay? They knew what was going on, and they didn't do anything about it, okay? And that's not the only case. There's the Barney Frank scandal. There's the Franklin cover-up and what happened in Nebraska with Lawrence King. There's also the case with Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino on the military bases. There's
let's talk about that.
There's also the CIA, the Pentagon, and the FBI all having child porn either on their own servers or on the servers of their employees. And this scandal came out a long time ago. Now, let's also talk about the $2.3 trillion that went missing from the Pentagon's defense budget on 9/10. No, dude. Hold on. The reason why I'm delineating these things, bro, is because there is a pattern, and I don't trust people. I don't trust institutions. I trust patterns, bro. And there's a very clear pattern of corruption and malfeasance for which the government is investigating itself.
This is where we
Operation Fast and Furious, dude. They were literally trying. They gave guns to the cartels.
This is where
the Obama administration. Then they lied about it.
This is where we agree on some things and then we fundamentally disagree. Just because you don't trust the government doesn't mean that Donald Trump is innocent. Just because you don't trust the government doesn't mean that Hillary Clinton is holding a prostitution ring at Pizzagate in a pizza restaurant, Jake. You believe in Pizzagate.
I never said that. You're trying to project now. What
you're claiming that Donald Trump is innocent and you're going by, I don't trust the government. Here's why I don't trust the government. There's a pattern. So Donald Trump must be innocent. Would you say the same thing about Hunter Biden and the Biden family, as some people like to characterize them, the Biden crime family? Hunter Biden has been indicted now for a second time. Would you defend Hunter Biden with, your thoughts on the DOJ and how it's being weaponized as you do with Donald Trump?
What's the charges against Hunter Biden, bro?
He's got gun charges now for a second time. We have Republicans that are claiming the Biden crime family when there's no evidence that Joe Biden committed any crime. This is now the second time that Hunter Biden has been indicted, by the way, with an unloaded gun that was unused and he had for 11 days that he didn't commit a crime with. To people like you or me, it would have been thrown out by now. But my question to you is, when a Democrat...
hold on, dude. I've talked to people in prison that are felons that there was a gun just even in the car registered to somebody else. It was not even in their possession, and they got 10 years, dude. They got 10 years.
So I can't speak to that.
Hunter Biden, hold on. Hunter Biden has photographs of himself, not just weighing crack cocaine, but hanging out with hookers, many of which look underage, and he has a firearm in his hand. So you're telling me that, and you're telling me that he shouldn't get the same equal treatment that so many people in the federal system should get?
I'll answer that.
10 years, bro. 5-year minimum.
I'll answer that.
5-year minimum.
First of all, I have no idea what case you're talking about and someone you spoke to prison with, and we have no idea whether they're telling the truth or not. That's number one. Number two, just because the way the laws work in this country, just because you think somebody looks underage doesn't mean they're underage. That's number two. Number three, if you look at the actual case of Hunter Biden, by the way, Hunter Biden's never been a felon before. I wanted to make that clear. An unloaded gun that he had illegally for, I think it was either 11 days or 14 days. And if you ask to non-biased political people, they would tell you no person would ever go to jail for that, especially for a first-time offense. So no, I disagree with you on that, but I do find it interesting that when it comes to Donald Trump, he could do no wrong in your eyes, and he's innocent of these 91 felony counts, which I believe are very serious. But then when it comes to a Democrat or Hunter Biden, you don't want to attack the DOJ. Why is it that when a Republican is indicted for a crime, you immediately want to talk about how you don't trust the government and the DOJ, but when a Democrat is indicted, he must have committed the crime or he's not being punished hard enough? Why is that, Jake?
Well, clearly you haven't done your homework because
I've done plenty of homework.
No, I just named Lawrence King. He's an up-and-coming Republican star, and the DOJ covered up his crimes. I'm saying that's atrocious and awful. Then there's also things like, Dennis Hastert, the former Speaker of the House and in the Bush years, and the fact that Sibel Edmonds blew the whistle about the fact that he had things like child pornography on his computer and that he was trafficking guns and drugs in Turkey. And then the FBI took that dossier and said, forget about it. Don't just forget about it.
If somebody committed any crime like that, I agree with you. I want them to the highest extent of the law. Do you think Matt Gaetz is a pedophile?
I don't know.
You don't know. Okay.
I will say this about Matt Gaetz. Just hear me out on this.
Okay.
I will say this about Matt Gaetz. Shortly after I did my Newsmax interview a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the 13th of November.
Yep.
Shortly after that, Matt Gaetz came out and started talking about single bill voting, and then he proposed a anti-corruption plan that was essentially my campaign platform, talking about term limits, talking about getting rid of lobbying, and talking about insider trading, and touting it as his own idea. So what I think about everybody in the dinosaur circus, that's what I call DC, because they're all a bunch of dinosaurs and it's a clown show.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you there.
Okay. What I think of most of the people in the dinosaur circus is that most of them are corrupt and beholden to NGOs, special interest groups, international corporations, and international banking cartels. They don't represent the American people. Not at all. That's why I'm running for Congress.
Okay, but everything you just mentioned is the Trump family and Jared Kushner. He received over $2 billion from the Saudi government. His daughter received over $600 million from China and trademarks. You're running against this stuff, yet you're telling me you would still support and vote for Donald Trump. That's what's confusing.
Over Joe Biden? Over Joe Biden? Absolutely.
Who made money in Joe Biden's administration from corruption? And where's the evidence of that? Because we have evidence of Jared Kushner knows. Well, I mean, laughing is not answering the question. I'm respectfully asking you, where is your evidence that Joe Biden and those in his administration, because Jared Kushner, right, and Ivanka Trump worked in Donald Trump's administration. Where is your evidence that Joe Biden is a criminal and he and many others in his family, in his administration, made money off of foreign entities? Where's the evidence?
Well, I'm pretty sure the evidence is on Hunter Biden's laptop. You know,
what do you mean
there's also the whistleblowers that have come forward talking about Ukraine.
Have you seen Hunter Biden's laptop?
Talking about the Chinese paying
Jake,
Hunter Biden.
Wait, you can't just assume that you can't just assume that there's stuff on Hunter Biden's laptop. You've never seen his laptop. You don't know it. Why would you make a statement like that? You're just throwing stuff at a wall, my man. With all due respect.
No, I'm not, but that's fine.
You know what's in Hunter Biden's laptop? I didn't know they showed
enough evidence. I've seen enough evidence of corruption from the Biden family and from Hunter Biden to know what's actually going on.
Then regardless
of what people like you think, I really don't care. I know what I know, dude.
Okay, well, you could say you know what you know. I'm trying to pick your brain and trying to get actual evidence for you to make these types of claims. You're running for office.
Okay, so then how about we talk about the fact that Joe Biden leveraged $1 billion against a Ukrainian attorney?
That's not true. Okay, let me give you the fact.
When he said on live television, when he said on live television that he said unless the prosecutor is fired, they're not getting the money.
Sure,
that's
let me answer that. Let me answer that and try to explain that to you. And if you watch Newsmax and OAN, you won't get this information. But the bottom line is the reason
you watch
why
CNN too, don't you?
So you think Newsmax is more credible than CNN? Has CNN?
No, they're two wings of the same bird, bro.
Really? Has CNN been sued for $800 million in a lawsuit with Dominion voting machines?
No, but two of their producers. But two of their producers were recently just indicted on child porn and child trafficking charges.
Okay, and are they still employed?
Well, and didn't Don Lemon and have like a sex scandal? Oh, and Chris Cuomo, wasn't he like feeding information to his brother about the women that were coming forward as whistleblowers? Oh yeah, and when they actually let him go, when CNN let him go, CNN said that Chris Cuomo, their number one anchor for a while, was a liar and couldn't be trusted. So, you know, dude, look, bro, the fact of the matter is both sides of the Mockingbird media are corrupt. I call them Mockingbird media because of Operation Mockingbird, when the CIA infiltrated major media outlets in the United States in the 60s and the 70s to control the anti-war and civil rights movement narratives. And it's only gotten worse ever since then. And yes, Newsmax and Fox News are a part of that Mockingbird media. Okay, just like CNN, MSNBC, ABC, they're part of the Mockingbird media. It is the same thing as state-run media out of USSR, out of Nazi Germany.
Let me ask you a question.
It's the same thing.
You mentioned Hunter Biden's laptop. If they're a part of the Mockingbird media, can you please tell me where you got your information on Hunter Biden's laptop?
Dude, there's websites all over the place.
Which website did you get that information from?
Where it has all of this information laid out for people.
Which outlet did you?
I can't remember the name of the website off the top of my head.
Okay, well, that's kind of important when you make a claim that the president's son, you know what's in his laptop, and you're claiming he's with underage girls.
I've seen enough to know. Okay, and let me ask you this. How do you feel about the fact that Joe Biden's own daughter said that she was so weirded out about the fact that her father was wanting to shower with her that she was afraid to shower and waited for him to go to bed? How do you feel about that?
Sure. Here's what I feel about that. She wrote a book. She made money off a book. Here's the bottom line. And now I'm going to give you some facts, Jake, not conspiracy theories. Joe Biden has never been convicted of a crime. He's never been indicted of a crime. You can laugh. Donald Trump is a liar.
I know he hasn't been indicted or convicted. I'm well aware of that.
I let you talk. Let me finish. Donald Trump has been proven a liable rapist in a courtroom. I've never heard you talk about Donald Trump. He also has had 25 women, and you probably didn't know this, including his ex-wife in court documents that accused him of rape. But people like you want to talk about Joe Biden sniffing a girl or a book that his daughter wrote about showering with her dad. Why is it, again, and I've asked you this question before, when it comes to Donald Trump, you seem to wear the Donald Trump knee pads, but when it comes to Joe Biden, let's talk about Joe Biden's daughter's book. Why is that, Jake?
Well, You see, Donald Trump and I don't agree on everything. There's a number of things that Donald Trump has said and done that I don't agree with. So this notion of wearing the Donald Trump knee pads, as you say, is unfounded.
Well, here's
because
what I say that. Hold on. To be fair, and then I'll let you finish, Jake. To be fair, this is why I say that. You claim that Donald Trump won the 2020 election, which he didn't. You say Donald Trump did not have any responsibility or bearing on January 6th, when you know, if you didn't say the election was stolen, which is a lie, January 6th doesn't happen. You don't talk about Jared Kushner and the $2 billion he got from the Saudis. You don't criticize his administration. You don't criticize his daughter. When I call him a liable rapist, you want to talk about some book that Joe Biden wrote. That's why I say you wear the, with all due respect, the Donald Trump knee pads, because I don't hear you criticizing him on Newsmax or whatever other right-wing entity. And then when you want to talk about Hunter Biden's laptop and you want to talk about the Mockingbird media and you want to attack members of the media, when I ask you for your source, that you seem to know everything that's in Hunter Biden's laptop, because I wasn't aware that the DOJ showed evidence to felons, with all due respect. You can't give me the entity where you got that information from, but you want to make complete generalizations about the media, the Mockingbird media. Yet when you make a claim, you don't source it with literally anything. That's why I say you wear the Donald Trump knee pads.
Okay. So all these media anonymous sources are sources now, huh? Well, look, dude, I am simply telling you what my opinion is.
Understood.
And the reason why I have the opinions that I have. I don't like Jared Kushner. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't like him.
We agree.
And I think it was a mistake, in all honesty, for that appointment to be made by Donald Trump. I understand to a certain extent wanting to have family members or people that you know and that you think you can trust in your cabinet, considering all the backstabbing that went on with Donald Trump. Right. I understand. Now, when it comes to criticizing Trump, there's a lot more that he has done that I agree with and I would do if I were in his shoes than the other way around.
Do you think he was a good policymaker?
But Operation Warp Speed, you know, things like the blowing up of a Native American burial site
at the Operation Warp Speed.
To create a border wall.
Jake, let's try to go one at a time. Operation Warp Speed. I agree with you. I give him credit for that. Yet he took the vaccines in private. And then when the Mockingbird media on the right tried to downplay the vaccines, and by the way, you're pretty anti-vaccine yourself. Weren't you discharged because you refused to take a vaccine, but yet you want to give Donald Trump credit for the vaccines? And then you want to talk about—
No, I just said that I don't like what he did. Are you listening to me?
Okay, so you don't like Operation Warp Speed. You think the vaccines were bad.
Well, I think that pushing something without real, efficacy or human trials is really a bad idea. Yeah. And I don't care what your reasoning is. I mean, the fact of the matter is hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and Regeneron actually did a really good job of taking care of whatever COVID infections there were. But the thing is, those are cheap and effective solutions. And the only way that Operation Warp Speed could be pushed through this emergency authorization is if entities within the government, the bureaucracy, the deep state, is if they were able to say that there was no other viable solution other than a vaccine. And when we look into the fact that some of these patents, dude, they've been around for a while. Okay. And there was a Chinese doctor over in China that was working on the COVID stuff in October of 2019.
So, Jake, this is where we will agree. This is if
trusting Fauci was a really bad idea.
Well, here's where I will agree with you. I believe we do have a cure for cancer and diabetes, and I believe the pharmaceutical companies are the reasons why we don't right now. So we agree there. With that being said, I don't go as far as to say the vaccines were all bad. In fact, they saved a lot of lives. I almost died of COVID. Does that mean the vaccines are perfect? No vaccine is perfect, right? But at the same time, I completely, agree with you that, listen, the pharmaceuticals make a lot of money. There's absolutely no question about that.
Yeah, and it's atrocious. They're standing in the way of very real cures that could very well change people's lives and help people to no longer be sick, that could actually cure cancer or cure diabetes and stuff like that. But they don't want those things to be released to the public.
I don't disagree. I just think that there's a way to say that without saying that, that all vaccines are bad. But at the same time,
well, I never said all vaccines are bad.
I didn't say you said that, but there are people out there that have said that. I don't think anybody should be forced to get a vaccine. I don't think there ever should have been vaccine mandates. So we probably agree on that. In closing, because I could talk to you forever, and I appreciate the conversation. You are running for Congress. You're out in Arizona. I agree with some of your policies or what you want to implement. My only point that I've said in this entire interview is that if we can get away from, and listen, you're entitled to your opinions. I'm just giving you my opinion. If candidates could get away from Trump won the election in 2020, which he didn't, and get away from everybody's a pedophile, then I'm going to take people like you a lot more seriously, and people like you that I could see myself voting for. I don't think January 6th was an inside job. I don't think September 11th was an inside job. I can tell you with full certainty, October 1, there was one shooter, and that shooter is now dead. I think if you can focus, and this, again, just my opinion, you're entitled to yours. That's why I wanted you to come on. If you could focus on the issues that you want to change in Washington, D.C., I think that would suit you better. That's just my opinion.
That's what I thought this interview was about, but you chose to, derail it because I tried to tell you the reasons why I went to DC. Regardless of what those things are or what my beliefs are, my campaign platform is sound, and it will dismantle the corruption in DC for generations to come. So regardless of what our petty differences regarding opinions of this or that, I think that if we can agree on the four things that I'm proposing when I'm running, now that I'm running for Congress, or things like cures need to be released to the public that are being held by the pharmaceutical companies and the bureaucracy, the deep state. If we can agree on those things, then it really doesn't matter about all this other stuff, because we can agree on the systematic corruption and how to solve it. And that, my friend, is the very thing that the establishment does not want, that the uniparty does not want. They don't want independents like yourself or libertarians like myself coming forward and uniting the country and getting rid of the two-party uniparty system.
Right. Well, in closing, I'll say this, and I'm going to be honest. I'm always honest. I believe you're being honest as well. Those four things that you're running on your platform, I'm with you 150% on. That's the truth. I would love for you to come back. I certainly don't try to derail any interviews, but I want to get deep dive into your way of thinking with some things that we disagree on. So that was certainly not my objective to derail anything. And I would certainly welcome you to come back and we could have another good conversation if you're willing to do so, Jake.
I will enter any home where I am welcome, just like Jesus.
I appreciate, we didn't even get into religion and any other stuff. Next time, Jake, I want to get into those topics with you, but I do appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on. Good, lively conversation, and look forward to having you on again soon, Jake. Appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Send me the link. I'll put it on my Twitter.
I appreciate it, Jake. Good conversation. And I will do that. I will do that today. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Jake Chansley. He is running for office as a libertarian in the 8th Congressional District in Arizona. Boy, we talked about a number of topics. We covered a lot, ladies and gentlemen, but I appreciate the conversation. I disagree with him on what I would characterize as some conspiracy theories, but at the same time, I do agree with him on the things he's running on. So it's kind of back and forth, but I will absolutely have him on again. All right, the QAnon Shaman, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask him if he can wear that getup next time he comes on. I don't think he will, but I appreciate his time. Coming up next, another Q conspirator. No, I'm just kidding. Chris Wynn is joining us next on Pushing the Limits. We're going to talk sports with him. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
On KSHP, North Las Vegas, AM and FM, K29, 6HP, North Las Vegas, and KSHP.com.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a piece of place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Saloon's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. Located at 467 Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just half a mile east of South Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super hero, that is. Because why be a sub? You can be a hero. Saloon's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
The Farmer's Burger from Farmer Boys. Beef, bacon, cheese, hand-smashed avocado, and fresh veggies. Best burger champ. That's how we drop the mic. Farmer Boys. Farm food ain't fast food. Farmer Boys' new always crispy fries stay crispier and tastier all the way home. If they make it home. Sharing is caring. Farmer Boys. Farm food ain't fast food.
Hey, everybody, are you struggling to find a pizza place that reminds you of Brooklyn? That true blue New York style pie? Well, worry no more. Stallone's Italian Eatery Pizza is a knockout. We're located at 467 East Silverado Ranch Boulevard, just off of Premium Road, half a mile east of South Point Casino, just minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Come by and grab a slice of pie. Plus, check out our Brooklyn-inspired Italian cuisine. Our sandwiches are super. Hero, that is. Because why be a sub when you can be a hero? Stallone's Italian Eatery is here to serve you phenomenal food, Vegas. Forget about it.
All right, welcome back to this Pushing Limits. My mind is kind of in a knot right now. That was 50 minutes of conspiracy theorist talk, I felt like. It was a crazy interview, but if you missed it, we just had the Q Shamon on. And we talked about a number of topics, from his conspiracy theories about October 1, 9/11, January 6th, and the man's running for office, trying to be the next congressman for you in Arizona. So, wow, that was interesting. I'll repost it on our social media platforms. I also want to tell you guys about my good friend Blake Wynn, who's not a conspiracy theorist over at the Keller Williams Group. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home, please give Blake a call, 702-540-3311. His grandfather, the late great Kenny Gwynn, was our governor. Great governor, by the way. Not a conspiracy theorist, so give him a call. Blake Wynn, 702-540-3311. It is Monday. And before I get to my in-studio guest, we have a lady joining us on the show tomorrow who's running for president. She's running against Joe Biden, and she calls herself a pro-life Democrat. I have a feeling that interview might turn into fireworks as well. She's joining us on the show tomorrow. I just saw her do an interview on Fox News, so she's joining us on the show tomorrow. We got the Mooch, Anthony Scaramucci, that's going to be joining us on Friday. So we got a lot of good guests. And the guy we have in studio right now is nothing short of that. Well, maybe he's shorter than Anthony Scaramucci, but nothing short of a good guest. Of course, I'm talking about the man, the myth, the legend, Chris Wynn, also known as the C-Win Special. What's up, Chris? How you doing?
It's going good, Brian. Good to be here. Yeah, that was something there. That discussion you had with, Mr. Angeli, Shaman of America, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, whoever the hell he was. I got to be honest, man. My head was about to explode throughout most of that.
I think I did better.
That discussion, I won't even call it an interview because I don't think it was an interview. It was just basically kind of a banter back and forth between you and him. It went in a lot of different directions. I'll say that. It was all over the place. You tried to ask some poignant questions to him and get some actual answers, and then it went into energy fields in Washington D.C. and I was trying to make everything configured together, which is the reason I was there. And we got a nice little history lesson going on there. That was pretty solid stuff.
Well, I'll say this, David.
And when I mean solid, I mean solidly terrible.
David Pac-Man did an interview with him last week, and he was very, how should I use the term, cordial and patient. I was a little less patient.
No, absolutely not. You were very hospitable in this discussion today, without question. It was about 15 minutes, like you said, for the better part of the last hour, and and you kept using terms with him like you think he's very intelligent and he's well-spoken. And he mentioned it multiple times, by the way.
Yeah.
I would probably disagree with that sentiment. But that being said, I mean, it was an interesting. He did throw a lot of. Let's put it this way: he did say a lot of things, and he was using a lot of words. But it didn't make a lot of sense.
We can put this to bed. When I do say I agree with some of the things he's running on, I actually do. He agreed. Yeah. He's running on term limits, which, by the way, I've always agreed with. Single bill voting, insider trading. So the stuff he's actually running on, I'm supportive. He's running as a libertarian. It's the conspiracy stuff.
But the major points of discussion, right, that you had with him, he just didn't want to talk about. He didn't want to make any assertion, or he didn't want to say that Donald Trump was the reason why they were all there on January 6th. He starts talking about all these, the JFK conspiracy, right? And look, these are all different entities that are important in American history without question, but they have nothing to do with January 6th. So. Like I said, my head was about to explode, and I'm kind of glad it's over.
Well, that interview's over with, but he has the platform if you'd like to come back on, because I think it was at least somewhat entertaining. All right, speaking of entertaining, let's start with the national sports stories, Chris, and then I want to get to the local stuff. We'll get to UNLV and all that other stuff.
No doubt.
Let's start with last night. Kansas City Chiefs playing the Green Bay Packers. Packers were in control of the game for just about the entire game. They were leading, and then, Chiefs had a chance. They were down 2, and they have the ball. They go 3 and out. Okay, fine. Give the Packers credit. However, the story of this game is not in my opinion, the Packers beating the Kansas City Chiefs. The story is the officiating, because the final 2 plays of that game, especially not the one in the end zone, but not the Travis Kelce push in the back, which was egregious too. The fact that the refs, in my opinion, controlled the outcome possibly of this football game, certainly the final score. You would have had the ball 1st and goal at the 3-yard line. You would have had enough time to score there.
No doubt. Yep.
Tell me if you disagree with me here. I'm a basketball official. I think basketball, right?
Okay.
Never been a football official. But that clear pass interference was like, with 5 seconds left to go in a basketball game, if you basically karate chop somebody in the neck. I mean,
I heard your analogy at the top of the first. Look, you talked
agree?
About this at the top of the show, and
you agree with me?
Obviously, I agree in sentiment with a lot of what you said regarding the situation last night in this specific game we're talking about. Of course, there's a lot of games like yesterday. Obviously, it's NFL Sunday, but what do we remember? We remember the last thing we saw, and we saw a game that absolutely, positively, I think, the outcome of the game was affected by the officiating, right? And you talked about it, and look, you had Paul McCaskey on earlier on in the show, and Paul talked about making comparisons, right, to other sports. Now, here's an important caveat when you're talking about officiating, right, at the professional level. All the other leagues have full-time officials. The NFL does not. They've been talking about it and they've been discussing it for the past 4 to 5 years plus about having full-time officials in the National Football League. All the officials in the NFL, for the most part, have other professions, right? They're either lawyers, they're doctors, they're school teachers, they're policemen. You know what I mean? They have full-time jobs or they're just retired and they're officials. My point being is this: they're not full. They're part-time. They're part-time. So I'm not making excuses for it. I'm just simply pointing out that that's something that the NFL has tried to rectify. Like I just pointed out, in the last 4 or 5 years, there have been discussions of bringing on these officials full-time so that hopefully the idea is, right, that stuff like this doesn't happen. So you can't have the outcome of a game like that transpire in which you have not just one call, but 2 calls. And then you had a caller actually in the first hour that correctly brought this up. He was talking about the roughing the passer call, no call on Patrick Mahomes. And I would agree with that idea that might have had something to do with the officials and why they decided to make the call the way they made the call. Regardless, the ramifications are huge, okay? It could have huge ramifications for the AFC playoff picture. Of
course.
Obviously, the NFC playoff picture.
So let me jump in.
So you can't have that happen. You just can't.
Well, we obviously agree on that. Here's my bigger issue. You can't miss a call like that, right? Especially at the end of the game. We know that people are human beings, officials, and they make mistakes. This wasn't just a mistake or something that happened in the first quarter. They missed this, they missed that. This was possibly controlling the outcome of the game and an egregious call. With that being said, my second issue, besides just fat out blowing 2 flags that should have been thrown, is the fact of accountability. When it comes to the NFL, they'll hold players accountable, if they make mistakes, or if they say something, they'll immediately get fined, right? If they criticize. They'll hold coaches accountable and owners accountable. The problem I have with the NFL is they usually almost never hold the officials accountable. In my personal opinion, the officials, and I don't know how many of them were in the end zone or could have made that call. I would imagine multiple. It wasn't just one. Those officials that didn't throw a flag in the last 2 plays that were in the area that could have should be suspended the rest of the year. And I'm going to tell you why that would work. The reason why that would work is I guarantee you we wouldn't be talking about these situations as much if the NFL put the clamp down. And if the officials don't want to be in an environment like that, they don't want to be afraid to throw a flag or not throw a flag, then guess what? Then don't be an NFL official, because most of them are getting paid a lot of money to do what I would consider a really cool job. You got to work hard to get to where you're at.
So that's another thing, too, you talked about. You talked about the money. So money doesn't really enter into it when it comes to a decision that's wrong or right on the field.
To the gamblers,
how much money? No, I'm talking about the money that they make as officials, because you brought that up in the first hour also.
About
you
money,
said
I'm
they're
talking
making
about a suspension.
No, you brought up how the officials are making a lot of money, as if that's as any bearing whatsoever on whether or not making a call wrong or making a call right.
Can I just say
you know
why?
what I mean?
Can I defend?
Also, no. Let me finish. Let me also address what you said.
Okay,
No, time out. No, just let me finish. So you just talked about how they don't have accountability, right? So let's talk about that. Let's make. I need to clarify something with you, okay? There are situations in which officials are made accountable. It's usually the next day. For example, like today, I would expect the NFL is probably going to come out and issue an apology to the Kansas City Chiefs. They've done it. There's precedent for this. They've done this multiple times, Brian, in the NFL, where the NFL has come out 24 hours later. It happened with my Detroit Lions multiple times. The situation when Calvin Johnson made the catch and they called him out of bounds. They came out 24 hours later and said, hey, our officials made a mistake. It wasn't the officials that actually come out and apologize. It's the NFL that comes out and apologizes. So in a way, that is some type of accountability. Now, they don't have immediate accountability, obviously, right? And there's laws in the not laws. There's rules when it comes to the NFL as far as players and coaches after games criticizing officials, right? So you can't have players. You don't have coaches coming out here saying officials are awful and that was the officials blew the game, right? You don't see that in post-game press conferences. So there's not immediate accountability when it comes to officials, but there is accountability, Brian. So I have to correct you on that. And kind of push back a little bit, because you're acting like, well, they don't have to answer to anybody.
Right, so let me respond.
Is what you're basically saying.
I never said they don't have to answer to anybody. Okay. There has been levels of accountability at times. My point is, hold on. Yeah. My point is, it's nowhere near enough. And when officials, in this case, blow a couple calls that can control the outcome of a Sunday night football game on top of it, where the world is watching, there has to be more accountability than maybe a one-game suspension. The reason why I bring up money is for this reason. We're not talking about a JV high school boys referee in a high school football game that's making maybe $50 or $60 a game. And by the way, I would argue some of those officials are probably better than what we saw last night. We are talking about, on the biggest stage in football, the world watching, you're making a lot of money. You're supposed to.
You keep talking about this, though.
Let me finish.
I don't know why you're bringing
Let me finish. You're
Doesn't
supposed to be a professional, and you're also supposed to be the best of the best. Nobody can look me in the eye and tell me the best of the best would not have thrown a flag in those last 2 situations last night. In my personal opinion, and I'll repeat and I will say again.
Okay, so
hold on. Yeah. Accountability is not, we'll give you a slap on the wrist and a one-game suspension. Accountability to me looks like the official or officials that blew the game last night should not be out on the football field the rest of the 2023-2024 season. And then, if it happens again, they are fired. You get to start the season next year, but if it happens again, not if you miss a call, if you miss an egregious call like that could control the outcome of a game, you are done. It should be a 2-strike rule. And I guarantee you, if they implemented that, these types of situations wouldn't happen as much. They might still happen, but they wouldn't happen as much. We see these calls or lack of no calls almost every week, and I'm getting sick and tired of it. I am getting sick and tired of it, and there needs to be accountability. The official or officials that didn't throw flags there should be suspended. They shouldn't be out on the field the rest of the game. If they want to referee high school boys football, they can do that the rest of the year, but they shouldn't be out there on an NFL football field. That's my opinion.
Okay, yeah. Look, as far as suspension, I don't really know. It's a very rare occasion when NFL officials in any sport really end up getting suspended unless it's an egregious situation, right? Unless there's something where it is just something that's absolutely something that can't be ignored, and then the official, it doesn't even matter if it's the NFL, the NBA, or the NHL, right? Or Major League Baseball. It has to be something kind of over the top. So a bad call like last night, look, there's been thousands of bad calls throughout the history of the NFL. Last night was one of them, right? It was certainly not the first, and it's certainly not going to be the last. So while I agree kind of in spirit of what you're talking about as far as, well, yeah, you should be suspended and then you should be fired if you make another call like that, that's not really how it works. When it comes to accountability in the NFL, as far as officials are concerned, a lot of times it's done through evaluation, and then it's done through, oh, by the way, you're not going to be working in the playoffs, right? Like certain officiating teams will not be working in the playoffs because there's been a decision made by the powers that be, the officials, the people that are, bosses of the officials, essentially, who evaluate these people, right? You're not going to get a playoff series, right? You're not going to get to work the Super Bowl. That's kind of the basis of accountability. It's not done in the way that you just described it, in which, oh, yeah, you're going to get suspended.
So I know.
So for example, so let's just talk about yesterday. Okay. So the game yesterday, right? They blew the call. It was obviously a blown call of pass interference. By the way, it was a blown call, too, because Travis Kelce was pushed in the back, and it impeded him from making a catch in the end zone that could have put them 2 points away from tying the game. That was also, and by the way, you talked about it again in the first hour. They talked to an official on national television who clarified that both of those penalties were in fact penalties, and that the officials essentially blew the calls. So that's not really a discussion.
So I just want to.
But when it comes to discipline, the NFL handles it just a little bit differently than the way that you would describe it. But I get what you're saying.
So the way
I get what you're saying.
So the way I described it, I am very understanding that that's not the way it works in the NFL.
Exactly.
That's not my point.
Well, that's the point. Well, that's the point I was making.
Okay. I never said. What I'm saying is it should be done that way, and I'm saying if it was done that way, we wouldn't see a lot of things like this happening, and there'd be more accountability, and officials would maybe not be afraid to make the right call at the end of a football game. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say that there wasn't any intentionality. I don't know that for sure.
Well, we don't know.
Hold on.
Speculation. Pure speculation. Pure speculation.
I'm not going to sit here and say.
The speculation?
I'm not going to sit here and say that there wasn't intentionality either. That was so egregious. You have a player basically like a monkey jumping on somebody's back, right? When you see a monkey jumping,
we can overanalyze it all we want. We can nitpick, and it was a bad call. Okay, It should have been called. It wasn't called. In our opinions, we fundamentally. I'm going back to Tony Soprano here from The Sopranos. I'm saying, Brian Shapiro, you and Chris Wynn, we are fundamentally in agreement on this issue. Okay, it was 2 bad calls.
Let me just finish.
We had 2 bad calls.
Let me just finish.
So
I remember.
Yes, it was egregious. He was hanging all over.
When I go to my parents' house and my dog jumps on my back, it reminded me of that play. He jumps on his back. He basically takes his arm and puts him in almost a headlock for a moment. And this was at least a second before the ball got there.
But Brian, let me point out also, this kind of mistake by officials when it comes to plays like this happens all the time. Why are we talking about it right now, though? It's because it had an impact at the end of the game, and it was a play that could have had a direct – no, hear me out. It's a play that could have had a direct impact on the actual score, right? Let me tell you something, guys, okay? If it happened in the first quarter of the game with the Arizona Cardinals yesterday, right, and it was already 28-0, we would not be talking about this right now. We'd still acknowledge that the officials blew the call, but it doesn't have the same impact. I mean, look, you and I are talking about it on the radio right now, right, on a sports talk show, essentially, on the second hour of Pushing the Limits, right? It's been talked about, I'm sure, all day long on sports radio across America because of the time in the game when it happened and because of the implications of what it had as far as the game is concerned. It had a direct impact. You can draw almost a straight line, right, of how much of an impact it had on the game. So that's why we're kind of harping on it, and that's what we're doing. And that's why we're kind of beating this dead horse about he was just draped over me. You're using analogies like the dog jumping on your back at your parents' house and stuff like that. Yes. It was a miscall.
Okay.
Things like that should not happen at the NFL level.
Yeah, at the same time,
Period.
the Kansas City Chiefs had plenty of opportunities to win this football game, and they did not. I certainly give the Green Bay Packers credit. Love has been phenomenal the last several weeks. With that being said, the Chiefs are not the team they were a month ago. I don't know why, and I don't think they should certainly be the favorite to win it all this year. I just don't think. I think they've lost a little bit of their. How would you characterize it? I think they've lost a little bit of their mojo. But anyway, we'll move on now. And we have a Monday Night Football game here today. The Raiders will be in action next week. This was their bye week, and we'll wait and see how this playoff picture plays out. So I did get an opportunity before I get to UNLV football to talk about the Pac-12 championship game here. I did get a chance to go to Allegiant Stadium and watch the game, and I got to tell you, Oregon was into the game about 9.5 point favorite, some places even 10. UW knew that they had to win this game to get in. And I thought that what I was really impressed with UW is every single time they got punched in the mouth and Oregon seemed like they were coming back, they came back with a huge play. It was a fun game. That was what a real football crowd should look like for a championship game, not what we saw in the UNLV game. We get that. But anyway, it was a very fun atmosphere, half probably UW fans, half Oregon fans. The crowd was phenomenal. It was great support. And listen, I understand UNLV is not at the same level as UW or Oregon. I get that. But it was a great college football game. It was a great atmosphere. It was a very entertaining game. It went down to the wire. And congratulations to UW now being in the college football Final Four. Let's talk a little bit about UNLV football, if you may. Chris, you were at the game, as was I. Going into this game all week last week, I wanted UNLV to win, but I said on the air that I thought UNLV was going to lose by double digits. Why? Boise State's got the best offensive player in the Mountain West Conference and arguably one of the top 5 offensive players in the country who's going to play on Sundays. He receives, he runs, this kid does about everything, and he was a problem. You have a QB who has a year under his belt, who was very fundamentally sound. He only made one mistake the entire game. I felt eventually, when you have a freshman quarterback in what UNLV has, eventually it has to catch up with him at some point. He has had a phenomenal year. The last few games, he has not been very good. And that was certainly the case over the weekend. Give Boise State a lot of credit. They're a really good football team and very deserving. They're much better than San Jose State. They deserve to be there. UNLV was not good. They weren't good on both sides of the football. I thought that Boise State played really good fundamental and really good complementary football on both sides. They had good field position for most of the game. And, Odom made some mistakes as well. He's not perfect. He is the Mountain West Coach of the Year for a reason. He got UNLV to the championship game. But disappointing loss in that they weren't really competitive, especially in the second half. They were never in the game. That's what was really disappointing about the loss. And I will also say this. If you don't know, UNLV is playing Mo's Kansas Jayhawks in Arizona. You don't want to lose the last 3 games of the year. If somehow UNLV can find a way to beat Kansas, man, that would be really mark a great season. I'm not saying if they lose to Kansas, it's not a good season, because obviously it is. The last thing I will say, and then you have the floor, because I know I'm going on a rant here. Yeah. I've gotten into a lot of arguments and stupid debates on social media, and I don't even know why I do it, with people who claim there were 25 to 30,000 UNLV football fans there. Now, I wouldn't even say there was 30,000 people total. Maybe. I know what the announced crowd is, and I know what I saw with my own eyes. There were, for the most part, a good amount of Boise State fans on our side. There were more UNLV fans, maybe 60-40, somewhere around there. The lower bowl wasn't even close to sold out. There were a lot of open seats at almost every section. If the lower bowl is sold out, then yes, you're looking at around 30,000. I would say there are around 20 to 25,000 people in the arena as a whole, and maybe 10 to 15,000 UNLV fans. I got arguing with people on social media where they say, oh, what a great UNLV turnout. No, it wasn't. I have been so positive with this football program in Odom. They have done a phenomenal job this year. The fans suck. The fans in this town suck. They only jump on a winner like the Vegas Golden Knights. I get it. The Vegas Golden Knights are a great product. Where would the team be right now if the Knights hadn't made the playoffs in year 4 or year 5? That arena wouldn't even be half full. I get it. Vegas wants a winner. Guess what? You got one. UNLV football is finally a winner. They won a lot of games this year. They're going to a bowl game. And the turnout for that bowl game over the weekend was a disgrace and an embarrassment. I am not going to attack people for not going to a UNLV basketball game. I love Kevin Kruger. They're not a good basketball product. They're just not. They're an average team in the Mountain West Conference. The students should show up. Where were the fans in Vegas over the weekend? It was an embarrassment. I'm tired of it, and I'm tired of these fans making excuses. You should have shown up for $20. You didn't, and the fan support all year has been a joke.
No question, right, Brian? Number of storylines from Saturday, what took place. By the way, quick comment regarding the Pac-12 championship game. Final Pac-12 championship game in history. So a little bit of history there on Friday night with Washington and Oregon going at it. With respect to UNLV, so we don't have to just speculate, Brian. You and I were both there.
Right.
We both have eyes. We both have ears. We can both, give our takes. So I'll just be quite literally look at the numbers. The lower bowl at Allegiant Stadium seats between, I believe, 25 and 30,000 fans, okay? The lower bowl was not full, all right? You pointed out there were absolutely pockets in the south end zone that were empty. The pocket in the south end zone was completely empty, from the band all the way to the southwest of the lower bowl. It was completely empty.
Correct.
Yes, I would say there was more UNLV fans there than there was Boise State fans. But Chris Wynn's assessment of the attendance is this. There was probably between 15 and 18,000 UNLV fans, and then the rest were Boise State fans. I would suspect that there was between 25 and 28,000 fans there for the game. That's my assessment. We can nitpick and say there was a couple thousand less. If you want to get grandiose about it and say that there was 30,000 in the building, I guess we can do that too, okay? For all intents and purposes, it was between 25 and 30. I was disappointed, like you were, and a lot of us there in the media that were watching the game. I thought there would be more UNLV fans there. I thought more people would show up, being that it was the Mountain West Championship game.
Right.
Vegas hasn't played a football game technically in the postseason, which is the Mountain West Championship game kind of is,
Correct.
I guess.
Yep.
Because you're leading into the postseason. And so it was a big deal. You're playing against a team in Boise State, which, especially recently in the last 10 to 15 years, has turned into a quality college football program. And they showed up. They had their solid allotment of fans that came here. And look, it was an atmosphere. Let's put it that way. It was an atmosphere. To the game, right? No question that UNLV has faced a little bit of adversity, right, here in the last few games, and it's particularly from a defensive standpoint. It's a team defensively that has had issues in the last few games. I'm not out of bounds, or I'm not being controversial by saying that. Even in the post-game press conference, talking to Jackson Woodard after the game, I posed the question to him. I said, what were the specific things that you guys had to deal with, right, from a defensive standpoint? And the one thing he talked multiple times about was he and his teammates' ability to wrap up and make tackles, right? These are basic things in football that need to get done, and it was not happening in that football game against Boise State. You pointed out some of the stars on their offense. Halani, outstanding running back, probably is going to play on Sundays. Their quarterback, a young guy,
really good.
Sophomore, is out there playing like Warren Moon,
really good,
and running like a 4.40. The kid's like 6'4", maybe 6'6",
very
like
quick,
220, and running like a gazelle. He had a great game. Okay. Now Boise State looked like the 2014 Boise State. Those teams that were going to
Keller Moore,
big time bowl games though, Brian. Right, going to Fiesta Bowls and going to
the
bowl games that matter.
Bowl.
And they looked very much that on Saturday. This is not disparaging to UNLV. UNLV had a great season. They did. You gotta love what Jade Maeva has been able to do at the quarterback position, right? To come in as a freshman and be able to grab a hold of the reins as the leader of that team, right? I talked about Jackson Woodard from the defensive side. Ricky White, obviously outstanding wide receiver. He's going to be playing on Sundays too, I think. Had a great year. And a little bit of strange interaction too in the post-game press conference. We had a person who was apparently a member of the media, but it was very fanboyish though, Brian, in the post-game press conference. He was lauding Ricky White with waxing poetic on Ricky White's season.
Yeah.
But I digress. Back to the game. Offensively, as you pointed out, they were just up against it right from the start, right? I mean, they were able to kind of get back and forth, 7-7 game early, and then Boise State just laid the hammer down from an offensive standpoint, and UNLV defensively just wasn't ready to play. I'm sorry. I'm calling it like I see it. I don't think defensively they were ready to play. And it was evident because Boise State went out there and put a 40-plus point spot on them, and won that football game. You pointed out correctly also, second half, UNLV was never in the game. It wasn't really a situation where UNLV, oh yeah, you can feel them coming back in this game. So, but again, I digress. It's been a successful season for UNLV, without question. The best record in a long time. They actually definitely have some relevance now in the Mountain West. And now you get an opportunity in a bowl game to play against a Big 12 team in the Kansas Jayhawks, which will be really cool to see in Arizona coming up, right around Christmas time.
Yep.
A little too early yet to say as far as analyzing the game. Kansas is a team that's got a good offense, so that's going to be problematic for UNLV from a defensive standpoint, as I just pointed out all the reasons why it could be an issue.
Right.
And I would expect that Kansas. I haven't actually seen the line yet, but I expect the Jayhawks to be a short favorite in this game. Mm-hmm. And so,
will you be going to the game?
What happens. I think that's the plan right now. The plan is
plan?
head on over to Arizona.
How long?
How
long
is
the
Chase
drive?
Field action.
About 5 hours.
Yeah, where the Arizona Diamondbacks play is where they're playing this game. So
I think it would be a fun trip, and I would like to go out there and watch the game. I know that the Vegas Bowl, they just announced those teams, and the Utes are coming out here, and that's a day after Christmas. So
that's the Las Vegas Bowl.
Yeah, so that's going to be a fun game as well.
So to cap it off, right, Brian? Positive season for UNLV, no question about it. Even if they don't win the game against Kansas, it's a positive step forward.
That's obvious, yeah.
And just looking long term, I just hope they can keep Barry Odom here, right? Yeah. When I talk about,
I've heard rumors
for
that
a couple of seasons.
His son is still in high school. I've heard rumors that his son's going to be playing here. I don't know if that's true or not. What I do know is that Barry Odom's done a phenomenal job. You don't want to lose 3 in a row. If there's a way that they can find a way to beat Kansas, boy, that would cap off a great year. You don't want to lose your last 3. And listen, they lost to 2 good football teams. San Jose State is a good football team. They're a bowl team. They almost made it to the championship. We know how good Boise is. Kansas is also a good football team. Yeah. But UNLV has earned the right to play in this game. They have one more game to prove themselves. So I would like to think, and I've looked and I've studied a little bit of this Kansas football team. You're right. They're very good offensively, and they're a good football team. They won a lot of games this year. Something tells me that UNLV is going to find a way to win this football game. We're going to have to wait and see what happens here. Odom's a really good coach. These kids got 2 weeks to prepare. Give a good coach 2 weeks to prepare. And listen, Kansas is a well-coached team too. I'm not saying otherwise. But my gut feeling tells me that UNLV is going to win this game. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. All right, let's switch topics here. We've talked a little NFL. We've talked some college football. Let's talk a little hoops because I'm really excited about this.
Yeah.
I don't usually get very excited with the NBA regular season. In fact, the only time I'm ever watching NBA regular season is when Chris puts on a game and he's got some $20 parlay working. Otherwise, I'm rooting for his parlay to win or lose.
Time out. It's not just see-win that's got coin on these games. The only other reason also that you watch regular season NBA, Brian Shapiro, is because you yourself also.
All right,
well,
I'm going to give you some news. Too. I haven't bet on one.
This isn't some secret.
I'm going to give you some news.
You're not afraid.
I haven't bet on one NBA game all year.
Okay, well,
not to this point.
Well,
but anyway.
Then the only reason you would watch NBA is probably because you want to see some player, or maybe your Celtics are on.
It's rare.
Otherwise,
rare.
You're not
really
watching.
For those of you, unless you're living under a rock. And I don't know if Seawin knew this, but we do have something called the NBA in-season basketball tournament.
Of course.
Well, it's funny because I'm
aware of it. Yes.
I'm not going to say which show I was listening to, even though I should. But I'm listening to a show over the weekend, a local sports talk show. And there's a female that's on the show. I'm not going to say who. They're talking sports, and one of the guests is talking about the in-season tournament. Doesn't say NBA. In-season tournament.
Right.
And one of the hosts says, "What sport are you talking about?" Now, I laughed. I chuckled.
That's funny.
And then I said that person should not be on the air in Las Vegas. She made herself sound like a complete buffoon. But at the same time, this is a big deal, even if you're not an NBA basketball fan. The reason why this is a big deal is for a number of different reasons. First of all, of course, the obvious of us getting an NBA team here. This is just the next step. That's number one. Number two, this is the first year that they've done this. I think it's a smash hit for a number of different reasons, and we haven't had the actual tournament here yet. They're in the quarterfinals today. We'll get to that. I want to preview.
So there's going to be 3 games here, right, in Vegas, right? 3 games.
Yeah, you got the
It's going to be the 2 semifinal games, and then the final game.
And we'll get to that. Yeah, and I want to break it down with you, the quarterfinal games and all that. But the reason why this is really good is because we're trying to get an NBA team here, which we will. And the other reason is it brings a little more interest to the NBA. These guys are playing hard. I've watched these courts look kind of cool. Some of them might say a little distracting. These guys are playing hard. These are really good basketball games. They feel like playoff basketball games. I have watched these tournament games, and I'll be watching my Celtics on the road against the Pacers today, hoping they win so I could watch Boston come to Las Vegas. But, by the way, I don't think the Celtics have ever played a game here, preseason or otherwise. But it's good because these adults, they're playing hard. They're playing to win because they are competitive. The $1 million aside, listen, the coaching staff gets $1 million.
$500K each.
Yeah.
Each player. And I believe everybody that's on the team.
Are you sure? I thought it was $1 million. I was told
$500,000, isn't it? I think.
Is it five? Okay.
It's $500,000.
I thought it was $1 million.
Which is motivation, right?
And well,
especially for the guys that are 9 to 12 on the bench.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
They're going to be cheering very.
Look, LeBron James, $500,000.
The coaches are getting paid also. Yeah. So that's a lot of money for them. So yeah, this is going to feel like, and the practices, by the way, are on Wednesday. I might take the day off Wednesday to go to the practices. Yeah. I believe the players are going to feel like it's going to have the feel of a playoff game. And it's a single elimination game. Yeah. And it's in Vegas. And the world is watching. All basketball fans are watching. So let's preview some of these games. Let's start with my Boston Celtics.
Well, let me respond to the comment you just made, because you talked about it. You called it, you quote unquote, it's a big deal. Okay. It is a big deal because of what you said, because it's the first one. Okay. There's a lot of NBA fans out there. Now, you're a Boston Celtic fan, right? Your team's right there in the mix. Your team is probably going to be one of the 4 teams that ends up here in Vegas.
There he goes again, just jinxing
My
me.
point being is this. There's also fans like your guy that's in here on the air with you right now, C. Wynn, whose team has lost 17 straight games. I'm talking about my Detroit Pistons, who are going to be nowhere near this thing. So there's a lot of fans that are kind of, hit or miss on this. We're not like, it's kind of, we're intrigued because we're like, oh, it's a different kind of way to have things play out during the NBA regular season. But there isn't this consensus out there, Brian, that this is it's a big deal for everybody. And look, there's no question about it, that it is, and there's an element of this that is interesting because the players will care, because you're going to get $500,000 each if they win this thing. So that's motivation right there alone. But I think people are, again, hit or miss on how this is going to impact the NBA regular season, and then, of course, more importantly, the postseason later on down the line, where you can make the argument that that's the real season, right? That's what really matters, is getting to the NBA postseason, and then, of course, winning an NBA championship.
Still, this isn't the NBA Finals, and I would never say that, but it's still going to have the feel of a playoff game because this game actually means something. Most regular season games don't mean anything. These games actually do mean something. It's Vegas. All right, so 2 games tonight, 2 games tomorrow. The games tonight, let's start with the Boston Celtics on the road against the Indiana Pacers. The Celtics are favored by 5. I am a little worried about this game. If you had to tell me, I would say that the Celtics win. In fact, I think the Celtics win the whole thing. But I'm a little worried about this game because it's on the road, and the Indiana Pacers are a really good basketball team, and that's why it's on the road. Celtics favored by 5. I wouldn't really touch that. I do think the over-under is just absurd, 246.5. The Indiana Pacers can score lights out. So can the Celtics. So I like the under in this game, though. I don't think they get that high. This is going to have the feeling, as I said, of a playoff game. There's going to be some defense being played, but how do you see this one shaking?
Yeah, a couple of key points, right, Brian? You look at this matchup, and you look at the Indiana Pacers. This is one of those teams that's kind of surprised some people. There's nobody talking about the Indiana Pacers before the season started, but they do have some good young pieces, obviously being Tyrese Halliburton is the main piece, who has been absolutely unbelievable this year. They're talking about him along the same lines of a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that type of impact player in Indiana. And the Pacers haven't really been good or relevant since the mid-2000s. Okay, so that's a good thing for the NBA when the Pacers are relevant in the Eastern Conference. Sure. It's going to make it interesting. Obviously, we've seen it's been I'm not going to say it's been seamless and they've had no issues whatsoever, but you love the combination of Holiday and Jason Tatum and Porzingis and those pieces in Boston with Jaylen Brown as well, too.
So you like the Celtics
Boston Celtics right now, from a talent standpoint.
Yep.
From a talent standpoint, are the team in the NBA, in
No
my
question.
opinion.
I think-
and I hate saying that because I'm a Pistons fan.
I think they're going to win the whole
But
thing.
I have to say it.
I think they're going to win the whole thing.
It sets up a very interesting matchup between between Boston and Indiana in this.
So it should be a good one today. It
Yeah, I
starts
think
in
so.
starts in a
I think
couple
the Celtics
hours.
win, though.
Starts in a couple hours, Chris. I agree.
I don't even have to knock on wood. To
The
say
other
that.
game, that's not what I wanted to
play
hear.
that out.
The Pelicans are on the road against a very good young Sacramento Kings team.
Yeah.
The Pelicans certainly are capable of winning this game. Spread's 3.5. I just feel like the Kings and their fans have been waiting for this for a long time, since the days of Vlade Divac and Chris Webber and Mike Bibby. They have a really good basketball team, and they have a team that I think will defeat the Pelicans, even though the Pelicans are really good also. They've had a good month and a half of the season. So I think coming out of these two games, Celtics, Sacramento, now let's go to a very interesting matchup. And not to name drop, but I know my friend Vivek A. Fox wants the Lakers to win this game. The Lakers are at home, that's key, against a banged-up Phoenix Suns team. The spread's only 1.5. I feel like, and I could be wrong, LeBron has a little extra motivation in this one because he loves Vegas so much. I mean, he can come to Vegas anytime he wants, but I think he loves this city. He wants to come out here, and I think you're going to have a big showing from LeBron and Anthony Davis. I think they get past the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. No question about it. Look, Vegas is a Laker town. Make no mistake about it. And so the NBA would like nothing better than having the Los Angeles Lakers here in town playing in this tournament. I'm not alluding to any shadiness or I'm not trying to, toss out some theory I have out there, or conspiracy by any stretch of the imagination. But yes, the NBA would love it if the Lakers were to be able to be victorious and end up here in Vegas. So, that looks to be the case. You talked about the Sacramento Kings. Look, the Kings, another team, obviously with when you're talking about Fox, who is another great young player, and you pointed out those teams back in the mid-2000s with the Sacramento Kings that were a lot of fun to watch with those matchups with the Lakers in the postseason. It is great for the NBA as well, too, to see that Sacramento's in the mix. But, I think that the Phoenix Suns are going to have they're going to be really up against it in this matchup against the Lakers.
Another interesting matchup on the road is the New York Knicks. They're facing the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks have had a really good first few months of the season. I like the Bucks in this one. I think the Knicks, just to get to this point, have done a really good job. Listen, you got to give Coach Thibodeau a lot of credit. And a lot of fans have said the best Knicks coach they've had in 20 years since Jeff Van Gundy. Thibodeau is a defensive-minded coach. He's a good basketball coach, and this New York Knicks team is playing at a high level. I don't think they're good enough to beat the Milwaukee Bucks on the road in this game. The spread is 5. So what I like, and we'll see what happens here, I like the Celtics playing the Milwaukee Bucks in Vegas in the Eastern Conference final game here, and I think it's going to be Kings-Lakers. And I think when it's all said and done, the league is going to get what they want, and again, I could be wrong on this. I think it's going to be, and it'll be very highly rated, the Los Angeles Lakers and the Boston Celtics in the finals of this midseason tournament in Vegas. At least that's what I'm hoping for, and I think that's what's going to happen. What do you say?
So, Brian, this leads me to my point on the in-season tournament, why this is a big deal for the NBA. It's because, and I'm going to be Captain Obvious here, guys, and bring up why. Because you have teams that are at the top of the league that are going to be playing in these key games in Vegas, right? In these semifinals and in the finals, you're going to have teams that will be vying for an NBA championship later on down the line come postseason time. So that is a big deal. Obviously, if you had a situation in which you had some middle-of-the-road teams or teams that were not so good that just happened to find lightning in a bottle and end up playing in the semifinals here in Vegas, it wouldn't be as instrumental for the NBA, is the way I'll put it, when it comes to that. Yeah. So that is an important thing and a big deal for the NBA, that you're going to get the marquee teams in the league with the marquee stars.
Well,
obviously, when I'm talking about the likes of Jason Tatum, LeBron James, and beyond, and Giannis Antetokounmpo coming here to Vegas, that makes it super interesting.
Yeah, I will say this. I wish we could replace one of these teams with the Denver Nuggets. They didn't win enough games in the first few months here, and they didn't win enough games in the tournament. But to me, Jokic is still the GOAT, and I really would have liked to have watched him play in person. I have never been.
You think Jokic is the GOAT right now in the NBA?
I do. He does everything.
What's interesting about that point you're making, Brian, is this. So, I mean, you think about the Denver Nuggets, right, guys? I mean, they're kind of, Jokic, without question, I think he's a top 3 player in the NBA. But, like, he's a star. But don't you get the feeling that the Nuggets just kind of, they aren't sexy? You know what I mean? Like, you don't think about the Nuggets like you think about, even, you brought up the New York Knicks, right? You know, I think there's a lot of NBA fans that would rather watch the Knicks play than watch, the Denver Nuggets do their thing.
You might be
I'm
right
not
on
saying
that.
the Nuggets aren't great. They're not a great team. They're the defending NBA champs.
Listen, I defend you in that aspect. When I hear from all these female bartenders across Las Vegas, and you're sitting at these bars playing Caveman Keno, and I don't think they appreciate your sexiness. So I do understand where you're going with that. Listen, I get what you're saying. It's better for the Vegas market. It's better for the NBA when the Lakers and the Celtics are there. But I will say this, Denver gets it done, man. They've got, in my opinion, the most valuable player in the league in Jokic. They've got Murray and great pieces, and Malone is a phenomenal head coach. He's done a great job with Denver. Yes, I do think Jokic is you can't defend him. With that being said, we have some very important NBA games this afternoon. We are also going to the Vegas Golden Knights game tonight, watching the St. Louis Blues. So we're going to be watching some NBA action on our laptops while we're watching some live NHL action. You can't beat it. It's a tough job, but somebody has to do it.
The 2019 Stanley Cup champion, St. Louis Blues in town, gentlemen, to take on the Golden Knights. And then they're going to have, it's a home and homer. So they're going to be playing here, and then they're heading to Missouri, the Show Me State, to play the Blues on Wednesday night.
Love to see Grant Fuhr in net, and I'd love to see a guy like a Brendan Shanahan out there facing
Brett Hull, the sniper.
Yeah, let's see Brett Hull out there.
Little Bernie Federko action.
But the Blues
go back to your Hartford Whaler days, right? When, when the Blues were rolling into the mall in Hartford, Connecticut, baby.
Also, thanks to my friend Jim Gemma for getting me tickets to this Winter Wonderland extravaganza.
I saw the pics. You put it up on social media.
Over at Las Vegas Ballpark. It's beautiful out there. And I met Tim Neverett, who broadcast the games for the Aviators. Super nice dude, and I had a lot of fun doing that. So thanks for Jim for that. Tomorrow we're going to have a Democrat running for president joining us. Yes, she's...
Wait a minute, time out. So she's a Democrat, but she's anti-abortion choice. Notice I didn't say the other phrase. I said anti-abortion choice.
She's pro-life, so I don't know if we'll get into it as a spirited debate as the QAnon Shaman. That was an interesting interview. But and then we have, of course, the Mooch on Friday. Always a pleasure having the sexy Caveman Keno player Chris Wynn joining us in studio as he does every Monday. And now I owe Chris some lunch. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate it. Have a great day.